In this video, we're going to learn some tools that help us to deal with more complex illustrations. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about layers and sublayers. Those of you who are familiar with Photoshop have probably worked with layers before, and Illustrator has layers that are very similar, though it does have some distinct differences. Let's go over here on the panels. I have my layers panel, and you can see right here that I have one single layer that I'm working with at this time. Now, I'm going to come here and I am going to just draw a circle, and I'm going to color this circle purple, and I'm going to now drag off a copy of that circle, and I'm going to color this circle red, and then I'm going to draw a square, and I'm going to copy that square by holding down Option and dragging it off. And I'm going to go to my eyedropper tool and grab that purple color for that square. Now, if I go back to my layers panel, you'll still see that I just have one layer. You'll see that in that layer I can see a little bit of a preview of what I've drawn on that layer. But if I click this little triangle to the left of the layer number, you'll see that I have 4 sublayers. Illustrator automatically creates sublayers whenever you draw a new object. So each object is a sublayer, and then they are all grouped together within the layer. Now, when dealing with a complex illustration, a lot of times you'll have many sublayers, and those sublayers might be difficult to identify what is what. They might look similar to each other when looking at them over here in the layers panel. So you can name these things. I can just double click on this layer right here, that name there, and I'm going to call this purple square. Now that's double clicking where the name is. If I double click on the icon, it actually opens up a little panel in which I can type it, and I can also lock this from here or hide it from there. But we'll talk more about hiding in a minute. This is the red square. This is the red circle. And this is the purple circle. Now, if I put these shapes on top of each other, you can see that there's a very specific stacking order. And that stacking order is, by default, the order in which they were created, with the most recent creations going on top. So the very first thing that I created, if I put that so they're kind of overlapping that way, you can see that I first created this purple circle. It's at the very bottom, then the red circle, then the red square, then finally the purple square. So that stacking order, again, is automatically set based upon when they were created. I can restack these in a couple of ways. Let's go ahead and put those back over the top of each other. If I come up, first of all, if I come up to Object and Arrange, I have the options to bring it to the front, bring it forward, send it backward, or send it to the back. Bring it forward would bring it forward one level, send it backwards, or send it back one level. Bring it to the front, brings it all the way in front of everything else, sends the back, sends it all the way back behind everything else. But I can also reorder things over in these sublayers and layers. So I can grab these and I can say, well, I want that red circle to be at the very top. And I'm just dragging it right up like so. And you can see now it's at the top. I want this purple square to be the very bottom. And by clicking and dragging, I'm able to just drag those things in the order in which I want them to be. Now, a couple of other things that I can do here with the sublayers, then we'll get back to the layers. First of all, if you see there's a little blue square to the right of this red square, and that's because I have it selected. Whatever object is selected will get a little blue square to the very side there. I can also select from in here. If I want to select the red circle, I can click this little circle to the right of that sublayer, and now that is selected out here as well. I can hide or show things by clicking these little eyeballs over here. If there's no eyes showing, then it is hidden out here. So the purple circle technically still exists in my illustration, but it's not visible because I have that eye turned off. And I can lock them from here. So let's say I want to lock that red square. That's just the square to the right of the eye there. Now there's a little padlock there, and I can't do anything to my red square. I can't move it. I can't resize it. It is locked. And I can click there again to unlock it. Now let's say that I want to work with more than one layer. I can just come down here to this little button that looks kind of like a sticky note curving up. It says create new layer in the tooltip. I click on that and I now have layer 2. Now I can move any object to another layer just by dragging them. So let's say I want this layer to be my circles. I'm just going to click and drag my circles right up onto layer 2. And now you can see that I have a circle layer and a square layer, and the sublayers are underneath that. Now, you'll notice that there's a little red color to the side of the layer 2 and a blue color to the side of layer 1. That is the color that these selection boxes will be in. Just helps me to identify visually which layer is which. So the squares are blue when I select them, the circles are red. And if I want to make some options on these layers, I just double click on the symbol of the layer, and here I can name it. So we'll call this one squares. I can choose the color. I can set it as a template, which if you remember I did that in our video on using the pen tool. If you click that, it automatically locks it and dims the image to 50% and makes it so it won't print. Or I can just manually choose those. Do I want it to print or not? Maybe that's just notes that I don't want printed. Do I want it locked? Do I want it dimmed? Any of those that I want, then I click OK, and now these are set. So layers are an extremely useful way to manage projects where you have all sorts of different elements and you need to be able to quickly find what you're looking for and just keep things under control that way. Another thing that I can do to a layer is I can adjust its opacity. And I can do that. So there we had the dim images, that does it to a certain degree, but I can also adjust opacity right here for a whole layer or for an object. So if I select that, I've selected now the red squares. Opacity 100% is completely solid and 0% is completely see-through. If I drag that up there, you'll see it hasn't just made it lighter or dimmed it. I just made it so the squares are on top of the circles, and you can see the circles through the squares. Opacity actually makes them somewhat see-through. Well, lowering the opacity makes it somewhat see-through. So those are panels, or sorry, layers. Let's talk next about isolation mode. Isolation mode, it can be very useful. It can also be very frustrating if you accidentally trigger it without knowing what it does. Isolation mode is a way to just focus on a particular object or layer in your illustration. If I double click on this red circle, you can see the red circle is in back of everything else. If I double click it, you'll notice that I've now entered isolation mode for that red circle. I've got the other things dimmed, and I'm just dealing with that. So I can now make whatever changes I want. And if I want to leave isolation mode, I just need to tap escape on my keyboard, and it takes me out of isolation mode. I can enter isolation mode for a whole layer by selecting that layer, going to the layer menu, and saying enter isolation mode, and you'll see that I've now entered isolation mode for every object in that layer, and I could work with those. When I'm done with it, I just click escape and I'm out of isolation mode.